Hey guys, it's Liv here, and in today's video, I want to talk about the new Pokemon, Greavard, and why I think this will actually be a pretty strong Pokemon and competitive. If you guys enjoy the content like this and you want to see more videos like it, of course, though, leaving a like on the video and subscribing for more are two very easy ways to do this. Comment your thoughts down below, I'd love to read them, and if you want to go the extra mile today and support the channel, click on the links down below to either the Twitter or Discord for updates on future videos and just to conversate with me more, or even just clicking on the button down below for the channel members, where for a few dollars a month, you can support the channel the extra mile. But with that said though, let's talk about it. So, Greavard is the new Ghost-type dog that was revealed today, and it has the ability Pickup. This is a pure Ghost-type, so honestly, it seems pretty decent in that regard, but Pickup has a little bit to be desired. I will say that I did hear this actually works similar to Symbiosis, where it will have an effect in competitive, but at the same time, though, I'm not actually sure if that's the case. And I mostly say that because the fact that, well, actually, no, it does say that. Okay. Because I had thought that Pickup used to literally say on Showdown, no competitive use, but it actually does have an ability in competitive. So if this is no item, then it will find one from an adjacent Pokemon. So, for example, it might go, let's say if I pair this with an Oranguru, it might steal that Pokemon's item. So I do think it's pretty decent in this regard. It could be something where in theory you could run this with like a Citrus Berry set, especially if it was to get something such as Belly Drum, and then you could steal the partner Pokemon's item and make it work for your favor. So at the very least, it could be pretty decent. I'm not sure, I will say I'm not sure how the used by works, but if we look into picking up for Pokemon, I know that this does have obviously the overworld effect of being used to find items, so if nothing else, when I'm trying to get mons to breed teams in game, this will probably be a Pokemon I use to try and get some pretty decent items. I know you can find a lot of vitamins this way, which is really useful, of course. So if nothing else, that's a pretty decent option. And yeah, it looks like you can actually pick up items that are either used by Fling or Natural Gift, or I guess Natural Gift's cut, but still, or you could pick up stuff that is like berries, for example, which is pretty decent. So that's pretty cool. It's basically just a way to get consumables. So I could, in theory, if I'm running this next to a Citrus Berry Pokemon and I lose my item, I could steal the Citrus Berry, which is pretty good. Just has to be used in the same turn. So a little bit more niche, but it's still not bad at the very least. I do think if nothing else though, again, Pickup's pretty decent for the in-game. You could typically use this to just find some really good items. And yeah, Pokemon breeders, I guess, they'll have a really strong way to find some really decent items with this Pokemon, which I'm sure everyone is going to love on their team. This is such an adorable Pokemon. But as far as what Greavard might do in competitive, outside of, the really niche pickup strat, let's look into Greavard's description. So for one, it mentions this has powerful jaws that can shatter bones in a single bite. This leads me to believe this is more of a physical attacker, which is pretty interesting actually, because if we look at ghost types, there's not a lot of physical ghosts, albeit I will say that physical ghosts have definitely been coming up on the rise in the past few generations, with Pokemon such as Delmise and Marshadow being introduced. Blacephalon technically also has a pretty good physical attack stat, but it's mainly a special attacker. The point being, though, is a lot of the recent generations have given us a lot more physical ghost types, so Greavard, hopefully when it does evolve, or if this is just the base stage of it, will be a pretty decent one nonetheless. The powerful jaws aspect does lead me to believe this will probably have strong jaws as a secondary, or as a hidden ability, which is pretty decent. It seems like Pickup is the only actually mainstay one, so I doubt that it will get a second ability and a hidden ability, but it's still decent nonetheless. As far as other things that Greavard is mentioned to be doing, obviously it has the candle. It looks like it kind of would be mistaken in the overworld for Litwick, which is kind of funny. It's similar to how like a Moongus are mistaken for Pokeballs. This one might just be mistaken for another Pokemon entirely. The other thing that I will say is this Pokemon seems like it drains life force, so I'm kind of interested to see if maybe this also has some form of maybe a signature version of Liquid Ooze, which could be pretty interesting, where when a Pokemon, basically for anyone who doesn't know, with Liquid Ooze, it's an ability that Pokemon like Tentacruel have, where if a Pokemon uses something like Giga Drain, for example, they'll actually end up losing health when they're trying to recover instead of gaining it back. The only other Pokemon that has this ability actually is Swalot, but I don't really think that this will actually be a literal just Liquid Ooze. I think it would be a reskin version similarly to how we see stuff like with Farigiraf's abilities being reskin versions of stuff like Queenly Majesty, because I would be really genuinely shocked if they gave Liquid Ooze to a Ghost-type Pokemon. Maybe if it evolves into a Ghost Poison type, that could be pretty interesting, but on a pure Ghost type, I think that Liquid Ooze just seems too perfect of a Poison type ability to really give it to a Ghost. But again, I would anticipate this also having the option for that, which if that was the case, that would actually be pretty decent, unless if they give this Pokemon a signature Ghost Fang move, or if maybe it evolves into a dark ghost type. Otherwise, I think that if this was to get Strong Jaw, which sadly does seem pretty likely, I would say that that's not really going to be great unless, if again, they give it a dual typing. Even with Bolton, for example, we saw that Bolton, it was a Strong Jaw Pokemon. It had an okay offensive stat at base 90, and it had all the Elemental Fangs. Well, let me rephrase it. It had Fire Fang, and it also had Grunch, and it had Thunder Fang. But they didn't really actually give this Pokemon anything else to work off of. In fact, did they even give this thing Thunder Fang? Yeah, they did. Okay, I was gonna say, because I didn't see it in the recommended moves. It's probably because of stuff like Wild Charge, for example. The point being, though, is that I don't really think that a non-stab version of Strong... Well, a Pokemon without stabs through Strong Jaw will really be utilizing it that well. Case in point, for example, we can actually look at Tyrantrum for this one. Tyrantrum is a Dragon and Rock-type Pokemon with Strong Jaw. And as far as moves that it has to take advantage of this, it has stuff like Crunch, Fire Fang, Ice Fang, Thunder Fang, but it doesn't have a signature Rock or Dragon Fang. It even has stuff like Psychic Fangs, for example, but no signature Rock or Dragon Fang. So while I do think it is likely that this Pokemon, Greavard, might end up getting Strong Jaw, I don't really think that people will utilize it for that. And I will say, to be fair, before anyone mentions that Tyrantrum would probably just run Rock Head, or that in theory it can run Strong Jaw, if it really was good enough of a Pokemon to be using Strong Jaw on, it would be seeing play at probably a higher level to actually utilize that. Or even, again, other Strong Jaw Pokemon, for example, Dracovish has Vicious Rend as a stab. That's why it's really broken. Dreadnought, Dreadnought actually does have a stab, to be fair, same as Bolton, but these are just weaker Pokemon in general. Mega Sharpedo is really good because it has the stabs with Strong Jaw, being stuff like Crunch, for example. But yeah, the point being, though, is that while I don't think a Strong Jaw will necessarily guarantee this is a good Pokemon, I think that it would be pretty much death sentence if it didn't end up getting a signature Ghost Fang or become a Dark Ghost type. Which I will say, though, if it becomes a Dark Ghost type, which I'm actually thinking is one of the two possible types it could evolve into, if not a Ghost Fire type, and I think that either one of those actually could be really strong. A Fire Ghost type we've actually seen is pretty decent from stuff like Alola Marowak, and if they give it a good speed tier, I think it actually could be a pretty good offensive monster. And if they end up giving this a Dark Ghost type, Dark Ghost only has one weakness to Fairy, and again, if they give it some good offensive stats, could be a pretty decent offensive Pokemon. I know that, to be fair, that sounds really basic, saying giving a good offensive Pokemon good offensive stats and it'll be good, but the Dark Ghost type actually is really potent offensively, Ghost being one of the better offensive typings, especially ever since Pursuit got left. And with the Dark Ghost typing, you're only actually weak to one typing, which is Fairy, and you could still hit it for neutral with an offensive Ghost move, for example. So that's why, again, I really think that if this gets a signature Ghost type Fang, which could be really good actually, they could maybe give it like a Bone Fang, or they can maybe give it Shadow Fang or something like that. It could be really interesting, in all honesty. And I think if you were to give it something like that, or maybe even just like a Shadow Bite, for example. But the point being is I think that the precedent is there to make this Pokemon really good. Otherwise, I think it kind of needs a move like Poltergeist or Shadow Bone to be really useful, which in that case, it could still take advantage of a Strong Jaw ability, for the lack of a better phrasing, but Strong Jaw could still be useful in theory with coverage that could benefit it. For example, you could utilize something like a Poltergeist set with Crunch as a second coverage option, well, as a coverage option, I should say, to handle other ghost types, and in that regard, it could be pretty good. But I think that for this Pokemon to really see a high level of play with Strong Jaw, which in my opinion is the most likely hidden ability going off the descriptions, if not, a couple other options actually I could see, as I mentioned, the signature version of Liquid Ooze, but for this Pokemon specifically, or even Friend Guard actually. It does mention that Greavard is actually known for being one of the most friendly and affectionate Pokemon in the region, and we did actually just lose Clefairy as a Friend Guard Pokemon. So it would be pretty interesting to see if this ends up actually getting Friend Guard. It's really the only other ability for a hidden ability I could actually picture on this. And I will say again, similarly, the precedent is there. Typically, Friend Guard is actually left alone for the NFE Pokemon, with the sole exception to that being Vivian. So I wouldn't actually say it's that out there to really give this Pokemon Friend Guard, especially when it has so much mention of it being a friendly Pokemon that loves affection. But what are your guys' thoughts on this Pokemon? Do you think that Greavard will be a decent Pokemon in competitive play? Do you think it'll be terrible? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And if you enjoy this type of content and you want to see me go over more mons leading up to Scarlet and Violet, if we get any more, leave a like on the video. It really does help a lot, and it shows me that you enjoy the content. Make sure to subscribe to get us on the road to 2K. We are so close, and I think we'll hit it by the end of the week even. So again, your deadline's coming up pretty close if you want to be on that under 2K club. Otherwise, shoutouts to our channel members, of course, being Josh, aka Ultra Player, Zeke, and Mia. Your guys' support on the channel is amazing, and I genuinely do appreciate your support very much. And if you want to become a channel member today, links to that as well as our Twitter and Discord are all down below if you want to get any extra benefits such as updates on content, or just again going the extra mile and supporting is greatly appreciated as is. But I will see you guys in tomorrow's video where we rank every single dark type in competitive Pokemon. Until then, peace out, guys.